The UK tech sector is recognized globally as being a player. So we've been able to grow as a London headquartered company into 3 other international markets. Of course, we service customers. We've got customers in every country in the world. But in terms of setting up and establishing a real presence, and we've been really well received in each of those markets. And there's no hesitation in terms of big companies being willing and interested in talking to us and doing business with us. So I think there's a positive image around UK tech companies on a global basis. So when we think about starting and growing a business, I think it goes through a few phases. And the very early days, which for us, 2003, feels like yesterday. So a lot of these memories are pretty fresh. But one of the key challenges is how long is the capital that you've got going to last you? How much runway have you got? And there's a huge amount of uncertainty and execution risk depending on what you've got. Now, the more you have to go and seek from outside sources, the less control you might have of your business, the less potential upside you might have, and the more complexity that gets introduced in the early fragile stages of a company. When we started the company as a 2-person business, we had our own savings as founders. We both sold tech companies previously during the dot-com days. So we had our own savings, and we set out to start this company. And our first instinct was, well, let's put the money in a bank account, and then we'll pay all the expenses of the company. We'll pay ourselves some modest salaries, and we'll roll like that. We very quickly realized, well, that would make no sense at all, because as soon as we put the money in and start taking it out, 40% of it is going to go to tax, which didn't make any sense. So we worked around that. We just lived off our own capital and put the minimum in. But we got to the point where we wanted to hire people. And we realized that, okay, well, now we have to put money in. And it was like a leaky bucket in our capital, how 40% of everything that we wanted to spend on building a team and building talent was really going to be going out of the door in PAYE and NI. And it frustrated us. And fortunately, we were a company that had a proposition that we could take to prospective investors and attract capital. But it really made me think that if the government wanted to help, rather than giving tax breaks to investors, and rather than giving capital gains tax breaks to entrepreneurs, because those are much later stage, those are sort of post-success situations, they would do much better to perhaps set up some structures whereby startup companies can have some form of special status where they can be given an opportunity to hire people without that kind of tax burden, so that 100% of their capital can go to work on the people in the business, on building the company, on underwriting success, rather than have 40% of the money going to pay the bills of the country somewhere else, because that's not really an enabler of the business. I think when we get to the next phase of growth, that becomes interesting as well. And if you take a company like Mimecast, for example, where we're in that middle zone, where we're no longer a sort of one of the shiny new things in Silicon roundabout, and we're not part of the FTSE 250, but we're creating a lot of jobs. In the UK, we're employing about 250 people today. We're a significant British exporter of software and technology. I think the government could do a lot more to celebrate and raise the visibility around the middle class, if you like, the middle sector of companies, those that are up and coming. And so we're really keen to almost trailblaze in that area, because I think as the big sort of class of 2010 and beyond, the exciting companies of Shoreditch and the exciting things in the consumer and mobile space, as those come through, those are going to be companies that are going to need support ultimately to become the FTSE 250 or the big NASDAQ listed British success stories too. So we'd like to see some more energy going into that middle sector. So I think one of the things the government can help with is making it easier for smaller tech companies or even medium-sized tech companies to be able to sell into the public sector. So the government spends a lot of money, and I think there's a great desire to stimulate the economy and to support up-and-coming British businesses. But the challenge that we experience as a British tech company is the expertise to sell into government. So people with expertise to sell in government have already been hired and snapped up by companies that have established sales channels into government. And typically these are big multinational, typically big American, in our tech sector, software companies that know how to sell into government, and they've got all the procurement stuff sorted out. So for us to figure out how to get in there and how to go and capture that market is quite difficult. So if the government were to provide training, seminars, skills development in helping companies develop the capability to sell into the public sector and to understand the vast procurement landscape and the needs and requirements of public sector, I think that would be really useful, because it feels to me like there's a gap. You've either developed a great competency yourself over many years and you've hired expertise, or you're sitting on the outside. So that's something that we would really welcome, and I think could really get government engaged in the economy that sits in the middle, which could be great suppliers to government, but just don't have the expertise to be able to reach in there and go and get those contracts.